Not too long ago, my kids came home from school. My middle child actually came home, and she told us that day they had read George Washington's farewell address. She said, "Did you know George Washington did not like political parties?" Actually, this is a thing I did know. I, too, had gone to school. I had read George Washington's farewell address. I did have to go look up the specifics, which were, well, I won't go to that. Anyway, this is a sermon. My text is from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, which is obviously not referencing our American political context. But Paul is very clearly talking about factions or parties. His are just within the Corinthian church to whom he's writing. Now, as Americans, we have a long and storied tradition of criticizing parties and declaiming the dangers of partisanship. This tradition is nearly as old, in fact, well, basically exactly as old as our tradition of making political parties and joining them. We tend to worry about the dangers on the basis of the practical social dangers that parties represent, the way they sort of tear apart at the weave of the social body. Now, this is true enough. This is a danger. It is true in our own day. It was true in St. Paul's day. There are various parties named in the New Testament, actually. One of Paul's regular opponents is called the circumcision party. And you can probably guess from that what one of their primary political platforms were. The disputes between Paul and the circumcision party, they really threatened the unity of the early church. But you can tell by the framing of the name that it's a policy conflict of sorts, right? There's a party named in Revelation, the Nicolaitans. We're actually not entirely sure what it is the Nicolaitans did wrong. Seems to be they sort of indulged in sensuous pagan practices and also claimed to be Christian at the same time. Again, this is a policy disagreement, right? Like, how are you supposed to behave or live? But the parties that Paul identifies in Corinthians are not labeled by policies. They're not framed in terms of policies. They're framed in terms of people. What I mean, Paul writes, is that each of you says, "I belong to Paul," or "I belong to Apollos," or "I belong to Cephas," or "I belong to Christ." Now, this is a different way of framing partisanship. It's different than policy disagreement. It's personal partisanship. These people are aligning themselves in an ultimate sort of way with an individual human being, with a person. Paul, Apollos, Cephas, Christ, they are all people. But one of these things is not like the others. Paul, Apollos, and Cephas, Peter, right, as he's usually referred to in the Gospels, they are all good guys. Like, they are S-tier disciples. But none of them is Jesus Christ. The only person in that list about whom a human being could reasonably say, "I belong to," is Christ. Christ is a human being, but he is also God. Christ did the thing, right? The power, the cross, that has the ability to save us. We can belong to Christ. But everyone else on that list did not do the thing. They just told other people about the thing. Adherence to Paul or Apollos or Peter is misplaced no matter how much somebody liked what they had to say. Paul, frankly, seems flabbergasted to find himself in the list. Was Paul crucified for you? And hear him. Were you baptized in the name of Paul? This is ridiculous, he seems to be saying. It isn't about me. But personal partisanship is still a thing. In the political realm, The objects of personal partisanship do not seem to find themselves nearly as flabbergasted as Paul does. But personal partisanship is not only a political reality. Athletes, movie stars, religious leaders, influencers, podcasters, musicians, we organize ourselves often around them all. American Idol named itself after this tendency we have to elevate solo musicians to a God-like status. At a much smaller level, we often end up idolizing the people close to us, giving ourselves over to them, spouses, children, as ultimate goods, ultimate good being a synonym for God. Now, what Paul, for all his dismay and shock at this situation, doesn't address is that organizing our lives around people, saying, I belong to, and then putting a person's name there, it's an entirely reasonable mistake to make. We do it so often because it is so close to the right thing. Idolizing a person is like the Coke Zero of religious errors. Like, it's ultimately completely empty, but it tastes so close, almost right. Don't worry, I like Coke Zero too, but when it comes to God, it's like we need the real thing. Okay? Personal partisanship, ultimately, like raising a person, elevating a person to ultimate status in our lives, it's like putting our life on someone else's team. And this makes sense because we, as people, are made in the image of God. We are God-shaped, if you will. We're not the right thing, but we're like close. We're like a roundish peg to go in the round hole. We're so close, in fact, that God came to us as a human being. In the paintings and frescoes and stained glass and sculptures of Christendom, God appears as Christ, as a human being. Not just like a human being, but like a real human being. Now, also not just a human being, right? Also God. But you can see why we make the mistake. Humans are God-shaped, and in the incarnation, God is human-shaped. I suppose what I'm trying to suggest is that we should be gentle with ourselves and with one another when we fall into this error of personal partisanship. Giving a human being first place in our heart is close to right. It's really close. And one could wish maybe that we chose better idols. You know, the Corinthians chose Paul, Apollos, and Cephas, and I'm not sure we're doing that great these days, but like, that's just a matter of degree. So what I want to say is becoming a personal partisan of anyone other than Christ is understandable enough. It's understandable, but not good. Because personal partisanship subjugates our sense of good and evil to the person. We abdicate our moral judgment on the altar of allegiance. And this is safe enough only if the person is good enough. If the person is perfectly good, like Christ. It's safe enough only if the altar of our allegiance is the cross. It is dangerous in literally every single other case. If you say, I belong to blank, and the blank is any other human being besides Christ, you're in danger. And when we as a church, or diocese, or community, or a nation do the same thing, and we fill in the blank with any other name or any other set of names, we risk wrecking ourselves on the shores of someone else's pride and self-aggrandizement. The only idolatry that is more natural than idolizing another human being is idolizing oneself. No person is more ready to believe themselves on par with God than the person whose name is filling in the blank when people are saying, I belong to. So we must push back on our own thoughts, on the words of others, we must push back from person to policy. Not, is this what blank wants, but is it true? Is it good? Is it right? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves if we give up the partisanship of personality. And we may not agree on how to answer, but at least we'll be able to ask the questions again. Is this decision, is this spiritual practice, is this choice, is this political policy, is it true? Is it good? Is it right? And yes, even, is it powerful? Because what we as Christians unleash when we reject personal partisanship is the power of the cross of Jesus Christ. For unlike every other human being to whom we might give our allegiance, Christ is the human being who died for us and for them. And that truth is so powerful that it has before, can now, and will again change the world. Christ alone, nobody else, is powerful enough to do it. But nobody else need do it. Christ has already done it. He's already saved us. We belong to Christ. Amen.